Motion to approve, Paul from Ankeny.
Thanks, Paul.
Second, Huesman.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any opposed? We'll consider that approved. The next item, Gunnar. We have a report on the Central Iowa Transportation Analysis presentation on that. I believe Allison's going to lead that off.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to give you a little context of why we're bringing this to you today. The MPO, along with DART, United Way of Central Iowa, Community Foundation of Des Moines, Mid-Iowa Health, and a number of organizations collaborated on this study, with United Way leading the charge. And so we've invited Luke Lynch, the Opportunity Director from the United Way of Central Iowa, to come discuss the outcomes and then the next steps with us all. So Luke, I'll invite you to take it away.
Allison, and good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. Off the bat, I will just say that I have an identical twin brother, Alex Lynch, who does economic development in East Polk County, and I know may work with some of you. So just so there's not any confusion, I'm not Alex, even though I look exactly like him. But it's nice to be here with all of you. So this, as Allison mentioned, this transportation analysis study was convened about 1.5 years ago, I think, and really with the intention of figuring out what are the gaps in our community, what's happening, what are the services being provided, and then what are some solutions. Because at United Way, we see that transportation is an issue for, or at least anecdotally, we've seen that transportation is an issue for everyone, and I think this study confirmed that that we serve. So really just wanted to have a really comprehensive study. And then wanted something that wasn't a study that wasn't going to go sit on the shelf somewhere, but something that was really something that we could put to use. So just going to talk at a very high level about that today. The study, and we can go on to the next slide here. The study was a 4-phase study, or project, I should say. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about phase 3 today. But phases 1 and 2 were really just getting to know the lay of the land, meeting with stakeholders and transportation providers here in Polk, Dallas, and Warren counties, figuring out, what Health and Human Services are offering, what services they're offering, what services they need, and just really, kind of taking an inventory of what's out there. Phase 3 is really where I will focus a lot of my time today, and that's there was a qualitative study and then also a deep dive, or that was the deep dive, and then a quantitative study that went on as well. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and we can go on to the next slide. And then before we go to the next one, I just will say that there were so for the qualitative study, there were over 40 interviews that were done with people in our community who have identified transportation as a need. And so there was a lot of really good, rich information that came from that. And then the quantitative study kind of confirmed a lot of what we heard there. The population we're focused on is the ALICE population, asset limited, income constrained, employed. And that is a population that at United Way, we are very heavily focused on, realizing, and that's the population are folks earning 250% of the poverty level or less. So if folks are earning above 250% of the poverty level, that's what studies have shown would make somebody self-sufficient. So for a family of 4, that's roughly $65,000 a year. And this study is put out every couple of years by United Ways of Iowa, the ALICE report. And it's something that really guides a lot of our work, realizing, and it's not a exact science for everybody. It's not that if a family of 4 makes $65,000, they're all of a sudden making it in life. But it's really the point where the tipping scale where folks are able to start to put money away, start to save for a rainy day, start to not have to worry about what happens if their car breaks down, etc. So we will go on to the next slide. I think the biggest takeaway from this and that first bullet point is that 4% of people within that ALICE population say that transportation is not a problem. So in other words, 96% of people within that population have identified that transportation is a problem. And the quantitative study was done through online and phone, and over 1,200 people participated in that. So there was a wide variety of folks that we were able to connect with. And so that's big, that 96% of people in our community that fall within that ALICE population have identified that transportation is a problem. It's not isolated or rare events. It's a problem for everyone in this income level. It is a problem for residents in Dallas, Polk, and Warren counties, although the problems are different. And so we'll kind of get into a little bit of that. The issues that people face are different. But like we see, it stretches across employment status, whether people are employed or unemployed, it's an issue within that ALICE population, and including people who are physically disabled, mentally disabled. And I should also say we in that qualitative part of the survey, we reached out to the ALICE population, but then also, new Iowans, refugees, mentally, physically disabled, people over 65, and people within Polk, Dallas, and Warren counties. So we had a wide variety of folks. On to the next one. Key takeaways for DART is that it's the most widely used, not surprising, transportation method for this population, used by half of all people at this income level. Differences between DART and HRDA, DART riders tend to use it to get to and from work. And I think, and I know Luis is on this call, but Catlin has told me that rider surveys have shown that to be true as well. And for HRDA, it's more for the families to use for dropping off and picking up their kids from school. So it comes down to really geography. HRDA is more in rural Dallas and Warren counties, and DART is more metro Des Moines. On to the next, thanks. So transportation barriers, the greatest issues we currently have are inconvenience and cost. So people are making trade-offs between convenience and cost. DART riders oftentimes, and you'll see here, there are hangups that folks have, and so they sometimes sacrifice that for the cost of owning a car or transportation. For HRDA, it requires too much advance notice is the biggest thing that we heard, and so on-demand scheduling would be requested there. And I think we can go on to the next slide. And again, happy to answer questions either now or at the end too. So key takeaways for transportation. Through this study, we saw that on-demand scheduling was a big request for folks. People having their own car was a big solution. Light rail service was identified several times, including folks in Dallas and Warren counties, and then eliminating DART fees. And then finally, that transportation helpline. So a number that folks could call when they're in need of transportation. So we see that HRDA on demand is the biggest ask. And then for DART, it would be potentially, reducing fares. And I know that the half price fare was just rolled out by DART, and they actually, and Luis maybe can talk more to this than I can, but they worked with Compendium on this to talk a little bit. So all of these things are being, considered and being taken into account. That's, I think those are kind of the high level takeaways. We know that that bottom one, that the nature of where people work and live in Des Moines has changed. And invites similar changes to transportation routes and schedules, and recognizes its ongoing effort among DART and HRDA. But this research just helps. So yeah, on to the next slide is perfect. So key takeaways here: on-demand scheduling is a big request and potential solution, convenience-related issues, and then car ownership. But we know that car ownership, we love to give everybody a new car, right? But the trade-off is, I think it's $600 a month usually to take care of a car, maintenance and insurance. And so for folks living in this restricted income area, does really adding $600 to somebody's budget, does that solve the problem, or does it just add more headaches? And so I'm not sold that, and I don't think the group is sold that car ownership is the solution here. But you'll see there that kind of the Maslow hierarchy of needs triangle there, pyramid, where, at the bottom, it's usually basic needs, and then psychological needs in the middle, and then self-fulfillment. And so in there, these are all things that folks identified within the survey: more, better job opportunities, makes life easier, freedom and independence, and then self-esteem are all things people identified. So on to the next, what's next. We're really excited, and this has been the part that I've been really engaged in. I came into this and I saw the final presentation in March, and then we all went into lockdown. I started in this current role in January. So I came into the tail end of this compendium study, but we have taken the compendium study and we're really using it. As I mentioned, we don't want it to be a study that sits on a shelf. And so we're really moving along to find some solutions. So we've got we've been doing through ideation sessions with BizLab, which is a group up in Ankeny, Carlos Rojas, and then Steve Whitty and Jeff Reed have been helping us. And we've got a group of 7 core group members who have been participating from different parts of our community. And there's somebody from DART, there's somebody from Every Step, there's somebody from refugee and immigrant population, there's somebody from, I'm missing a few here, I'm sure, but the arts community. We wanted to make sure we had a broad array of folks, and also wanted to realize that it's not just a public transportation fix. Like what are some private, what we wanted to include all of the potential solutions in our conversation. You know, it doesn't have to just be a public fix. What are the private entities? What's going on out there that this could be? What are all the options? And even as much as where is housing? What is housing next to the jobs that people live in? It's a lot of different conversations. You'll see just the sessions there. The first 3 sessions that we had starting in November. Lauren Holderness of Compendium, who put together this slide deck, actually presented the big slide deck to everyone so that everyone could be on the same level setting and understand the reasoning behind the study, the data, and really kind of do a deep dive. Then we went into hopes, fears, and sacred cows exercise of what is transportation, what are your hopes, what are your fears, and sacred cows. And so we asked that group of 7, and everyone gave their input. And then we moved on to framing the challenge. And framing the challenge, this really included more than that core group of 7. There were 27 people that participated in that group. So it included end users, it included people who were close to end users, so caseworkers, folks who are working with transportation, or folks working with those in need of transportation on a regular basis, to really frame the challenge. What is the challenge? And kind of put some guardrails onto it. And that's when we broke for the holidays. After the first of the year, we'll go into really boiling down those concepts and development, concept testing, and then session 7 will wrap up, I think, at the end of February. It's tentative on the schedule, to hopefully have some solutions forward. The really exciting thing is that I mentioned there's 27 people in that middle paragraph there. There are 109 ideas in 240 minutes, 109 ideas and 13 initial themes. So we've really got some traction. I'm really excited to see where this goes. Don't have answers yet or what that will, but I'd be happy to keep folks updated on what comes of that. And this group will be instrumental, I'm sure, in implementing some of those solutions. So stay tuned, more to come, but really exciting work. And really, really cool to see the collaboration among different folks. Even in the study that was commissioned, so many different folks in our community that have identified transportation as an issue. So I think that we will make some headway in this. Again, there's my information. If you've got questions, feel free to contact me there. And I see Julia has a question, but I'm not sure if there's time.
Hi, Luke. This is Julia. I'm the executive director of HERDA. And so I saw that there were a lot of things that were said about HERDA. And I think, are we going to be able to be part of this process moving forward? Because a lot of that information was not exactly accurate. I can see that it might be the perception from the surveys, but it's not actually how HERDA operates. And we also just found, we have some opportunities and some other things that we are doing in our communities, especially those Dallas County and Warren County, that I just think you need to be made aware of those as well. So anyway, I would just like to be involved in that moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And I should have clarified that these were the perceptions, and there were some perceptions of DART as well that were not, when you dig into it, not necessarily the case.
Right.
But, yes, I'd be happy to. I'll keep you posted. And
okay.
Bring you
Thank
in.
you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thanks very much, Luke, for the presentation.
Thank you.
And
again, there's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to anyone if you have questions.
Yeah, certainly. It is a lot of great information. So it takes a little while to digest all of it, but yeah, please take a look at the study and get back to Luke or Allison was involved as well. if you have questions, and if they don't have the answers, they can sure find them for us. So, all right, we'll move on then to item number 5, a report on TAP criteria and schedule. And Shiroshi.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So as you all know that our office has been working on the update to the TAP scoring criteria for a few months now, and we've brought it before you a couple times. So we started off on this a few months ago with the intent of updating the scoring criteria that we use for TAP applications in order to bring them in alignment with our LRTP goals. We wanted to update and refine, reduce redundancies and that kind of thing, make them more objective. We wanted to improve the process and also add safe routes to school specific project category in there. So with that, as you all know, you have looked at the scoring, the updated scoring table. What we did was we took the topic areas and fleshed out the details a little bit more. We added a couple new topic areas based on LRTP goals, and that were health and environmental sustainability and safety. So that's kind of the background of what we were trying to do. Next slide, please. So with that, we went through quite a bit of extensive review process. As you can see, with the initial review, we took it to the Central Iowa Bike and Pedestrian Roundtable. A couple of the MPO committees, planning and engineering subcommittees reviewed it, and then the funding subcommittee. We received input from all of them and continued to refine and update the scoring criteria based on the input that we received. Following that version, we brought it before you, and since then the criteria hasn't really changed. It has stayed the same. We haven't received any additional feedback. We, however, have done some additional review as following that. So we've taken it back to the Bike Ped Roundtable. We also had additional meetings and discussions with the City of Des Moines, specifically the Parks Department, and had the Des Moines Trails and Greenways Committee review the document, also the MPO Environment Roundtable, and finally, at the request of Executive Committee, we have taken it back one more time to the MPO SDBG Funding Subcommittee for them to review, and we haven't received any additional feedback, so the document essentially stays the same as what you have seen. So with that, next slide, please. Moving on, we are taking this to our board for final approval, and pending approval by them on January 21st. Our hope is to open up the fiscal year 2025 TAP application on January 22nd. The application deadline will be February 26th. And after the applications are all received, the rest of the process is going to run concurrently with the SDBG application schedule, which includes presentation to the funding subcommittee, announcement of awards, and so on and so forth. One thing to keep in mind is that if projects do end up receiving Safe Routes to School funding, then they would be required to apply to the state Safe Routes application. And that is always, the deadline to apply for that is always October 1st of the fiscal year that the project is programmed. So for instance, if a Safe Routes project ends up being programmed in fiscal year 21, the applicants will be applying to the state on October 1st, 2021. So with that, I wanted to give you an update on the funding schedule, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer at this time. Thanks.
Any questions for Shiroshi? All right, thanks, Shiroshi. And if you have any that you think of later, you can sure follow up with her in the coming days and as we get closer to the applications coming in. Move on to the report draft of the 2017-2021 safety performance targets. Z.
Yeah, thank you. Next slide. I wanted to give an update on the 2020 safety performance and also a review of the 2021 safety performance targets that we have. But starting off with some background on why we're doing these safety performance targets as part of the Federal Highway Administration's Highway Safety Improvement Program. State DOTs and MPOs annually report safety performance measures. These safety performance measures include the number of fatalities, the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the number of serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and also the number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. Next slide. MPOs can either agree to support their state DOT's targets, or they can establish targets for their MPO specific area. And so based on a previous target setting, the MPO will continue to establish MPO specific safety targets for the 2017 to 2021 period. Next slide. Current regulations currently use the language of safety targets, and MPO committees have in the past expressed that they do not approve of using the term targets when talking about crashes, fatalities, and serious injuries. However, MPO committees have still approved of setting targets while maintaining that this term and language might not be appropriate. Next slide. So now taking a look at our 2020 safety performance. In 2020, there were 36 fatalities within the MPO planning area as compared to 35 in 2019. There were 137 serious injuries compared to 172 in 2019, and there were 27 non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries compared to 23 in 2019. Next slide. So putting those 2020 numbers within a historic context, within that historic 10-year context, we have been seeing some decline in fatalities since 2010, but more recently within the last 5 years or so, we have been seeing an upward trend in the number of fatalities. And so the overall trend for fatalities is kind of like a U curve where we've near the bottom, and now we're slowly increasing on that U. Next slide. In terms of serious injuries, historically, we are seeing a downward trend in the number of serious injuries. Next slide. And although we had an increase in the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries in 2020 compared to 2019, overall, historically, we are still continuing to see a decreasing trend in the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Next slide. So putting everything together, our 2017 to 2021 safety performance targets are in the column to the right. The fatality rates and the serious injury rates are still being determined. We're still finalizing some vehicle mile traveled data to determine those targets. And our 2015 to 2019 baseline is in the column to the left, and our most recent performance for 2020 is in the column in the middle. Next slide. So a bit of a timeline. In November of 2020, we brought these draft safety targets and methodology to the MPO Engineering Subcommittee and the Iowa DOT for their review, and also for their assistance on how do we incorporate COVID-19 effects on vehicle miles traveled. Now in January 2021, we're presenting and reviewing these preliminary targets with our MPO committees, and we're also finalizing the 2020 crash data and vehicle miles traveled data into our finalized report. Next month in February 2021, with all that information finalized, will bring finalized reports and finalized targets to the MPO committees for your vote. So if you have any questions on these safety targets and performance, I can take them at this time.
Any questions for Z? Thanks, Z. We'll move on to the fiscal year 2022 UPWP and budget development. Dylan?
Thank you. So it's that time of year again to start working on the work program and budget. Just to remind everybody, this document includes our work elements and activities, documents just what's going on with the MPO in terms of our committees and staff structure and so forth, and also the costs associated with all of that information. A lot of our work activities are tied to federal requirements, so we don't, most everything we do is because we have to do it, or it's a variation of that, feeding into the next long range plan, for example. The way this works is over the next few months, we'll be working on developing the draft. The draft is due April 1st. We send that to DOT, they get us comments back, and then the final is due in by June 1st. So you go to the next slide. Some of the requirements that we have as an MPO based on US code or per US code, we have to do a few main documents. So the work program, the long range transportation plan, which we're not in an update year, so there won't be a lot to do with that. The TIP, which we do every year, and a public participation plan that we have to maintain on there's no set schedule, but we just have to maintain that. Some additional requirements are, because we are TMA over an MPO over 200,000, we have to have a congestion management process. We have to maintain decision-making bodies, so supporting this group and policy committee, and we also have to administer the STBG funding process. So a lot of our work relates to those. What we're asking though, because we are a membership organization, you all pay dues to be members and you have access to our staff and everything. We want to know what projects, plans, studies, research, and so forth you might want from us. So now is a good time to get that into us. We can accept that really anytime throughout the year and always amend the budget and the work program. But it really helps to have that information now while we're putting everything together so we can understand, how we can allocate staff and that sort of thing. So I'd ask you over the next month or so, please give that some thought and let us know if you have anything that you want in there. We will be producing, like I said, drafts and updates over the coming months too, so you can see what we're thinking as well. And hopefully those two things match up and we'll have a better chance for, feedback and so forth if you want to know why we're proposing what we're proposing. But like I said, if you have anything right now, please let us know. I don't know if there's another slide there, Gunnar. Nope. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan. And if you have questions or you have some plans or studies you'd like to discuss having help from the MPO staff on, please reach out to myself, Dylan, or any of the staff members. All right, with that, we'll go to upcoming events. Gunnar, do we have any?
Thanks, Todd. Yes, we have a few to make you aware of. First up, want to make you aware of the Iowa Safe Routes to School conference coming up later this month. Times, dates, and registration URL are on the screen right now. And this is being held in conjunction with the Iowa Bicycle Summit, which are the subsequent 2 days on the 29th and 30th. There's a couple different fee structures here, either for the continuing education track or the advocacy track. Again, more information and registration information is on the screen. And lastly, I want to let you know about an upcoming training event that is being offered through the RAIN campaign, of which the MPO is a participant. Topics here include all the basics on rain gardening, but also designs, layout, maintenance, funding options, etc. February 11th and 12th, this one is free and online, and you go to iowastormwater.org for registration. That's, I believe, it from me, unless you have, oh, finally, one more, sorry. The Smart Growth Equity Summit is also coming up later this month. Want to give you a heads up that that is available to you and fellow members of your staff as well. And that is it for me.
Thanks, Gunnar. I don't know that I have any other action items. Anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up to the committee? Sure, John, we can send that information out. Saw your comment there. We'll send that out in a follow-up email, certainly. If not, our next meeting date is February 4th. Same time, same channel, most likely. And hope everyone had a good holiday and a happy new year. And we'll consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for attending today.